In the bustling streets of Seoul, a chance encounter between Maya, a confident plus-size Ghanaian delivery woman chasing her fashion dreams, and Jisoo, a charming Korean CEO with an eye for talent, sparks a love story stitched with ambition, culture, and fate. If you love heartwarming stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now grab your popcorn and let's dive right in. The rain in Seoul had a way of soaking through more than just clothes. It clung to the skin, seeped into shoes, and somehow found its way into a person's bones. Maya Williams tightened the straps of her delivery bag as she maneuvered her scooter through the shimmering streets, wipers on her helmet visor working overtime. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with the comforting aroma of the steaming soup inside her bag. This was her third delivery in the Gangnam area for the night, and her legs were already aching from climbing stairs in buildings without elevators. Still, she hummed softly to herself, a melody she used to sing in Ghana when the rains came. When she finally pulled up to her destination, she blinked at the tall glass building in front of her. Couture. Even the name shimmered on the illuminated sign like it belonged in a world she had only ever seen in magazines. She hesitated for a moment, wiping her helmet visor before pulling it off. "All right, Maya," she muttered to herself. In and out. Soup delivered, dream girl still intact. Inside the lobby, the warmth hit her instantly, fogging her glasses. She pushed them up her nose, balancing the heavy paper bag in her hands as she made her way to the receptionist. But just as she was about to reach the desk, a tall figure rounded the corner. The collision was quick and unavoidable. The bag lurched, the lid popped, and the rich, spicy soup cascaded down the front of the man's perfectly tailored gray suit. Maya gasped, her eyes darting up to meet his. He was striking, sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, hair swept back in a way that looked effortless yet expensive. This was no ordinary man in a suit. "Oh my goodness. I am so sorry," she said, fumbling for napkins from her pocket. "I didn't see you coming." Instead of the anger she braced for, his lips curved into the faintest smile. "I suppose I didn't see you coming either." His voice was deep, smooth, like a song you didn't realize you knew the words to. Maya's heart thudded as she dabbed uselessly at his jacket. "This is really bad. I can pay for the dry cleaning." He glanced down at the mess, then back at her. "It's just a suit." "Just a suit?" she repeated, narrowing her eyes with a half-smile. "Sir, that's like me saying it's just kimchi. It's sacred, no?" That drew a soft laugh from him, and for some reason, it made the whole situation less mortifying. "Fair point," he said. Then his eyes flickered to the sketchbook peeking out of her delivery bag, its edges damp from the rain. "You draw?" Maya froze for a second. "A little," she said quickly, hugging the bag closer. "It's just ideas. Not important." "Everything starts with an idea," he said, but before she could respond, the receptionist cleared her throat. "Mr. Kong, your meeting." "I'll be there in a minute," he replied without looking away from Maya. Then, almost as an afterthought, he asked, "What's your name?" "Maya." "Maya Williams." "Well, Maya Williams, you've made this a much more memorable evening than I expected." He stepped aside, letting her pass to deliver the food. She walked away with her cheeks burning, muttering to herself about rich men with mysterious smiles. She didn't know who Mr. Kong was, but she had a feeling she'd just embarrassed herself in front of someone important. The next day, halfway through her deliveries, her supervisor called her into the small break room. "Someone sent this for you," he said, holding out a neatly wrapped box with a note attached. Maya raised an eyebrow. "For me? Who even knows I work here?" She opened it carefully, revealing a small leather-bound notebook embossed with golden patterns and a set of fine drawing pencils. The note read, "To Maya Williams for more ideas. Everything starts somewhere. K.J." Her fingers lingered on the initials. Kong Jisoo. It clicked. She'd heard the name before. CEO of Couture. Billionaire. One of the youngest powerhouses in the Korean fashion world. Her coworker leaned over her shoulder. "Wait, are you friends with Kong Jisoo now?" Maya scoffed. "Friends? No. I ruined his suit. This is probably his way of making sure I never go near him again." But later that evening, just as she was about to clock out, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Come by Couture tomorrow. I think you'll like what you see." She stared at the message for a long moment, biting her lip. "What in the world are you up to, Mr. Kong?" she whispered to herself, but deep down, her heart was already beating faster at the thought. The next afternoon, Maya stood in front of Couture's towering glass building, clutching the leather-bound notebook he'd sent her. She'd dressed more carefully than usual, Jeans that actually fit her curves well, a loose cream blouse, and the Ankara headscarf her mother had given her before she left Ghana. Still, her palms were damp. "All right, Maya Williams," she whispered to herself. "You're here to look, not to trip and cause an international fashion scandal." She took a deep breath and walked through the revolving doors. The receptionist recognized her instantly and smiled. "Mr. Kong is expecting you. This way, please." Maya followed her through a wide hallway until the world suddenly opened into a studio unlike anything she had ever seen. Rolls of fabric in every imaginable color lined the walls. Silks that caught the light like liquid gold, cotton prints that reminded her of Ghanaian marketplaces, soft wools, shimmering satins. Designers moved around like dancers, pinning, cutting, stitching, the air alive with the sound of scissors and humming sewing machines. She turned slowly, her eyes wide. This is incredible," she murmured. "Glad you like it." She turned to see him, Kong Jisoo, leaning casually against a table, sleeves rolled up, a hint of a smile on his face. "It's a bit quieter than usual today," he added, stepping closer. "Come, I want to show you something." He led her to a corner where sketches were pinned to a board, sleek gowns, tailored suits, avant-garde pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. Maya studied them in awe, then shifted uncomfortably as she remembered the notebook in her hand. I brought something," she said softly, opening it and flipping to a page filled with her own designs. Bright, bold dresses with African-inspired prints blended into modern Korean cuts, tailored to fit plus-size bodies beautifully. "They're nothing compared to yours, but—" He interrupted, his eyes fixed on the page. "These are stunning." She laughed nervously. "You don't have to be nice." "I'm not being nice," he said firmly. "Look at this one. The way you've balanced the Ankara fabric with the structured silhouette? That's genius. You're designing for a body that fashion often ignores, and you're doing it with elegance and pride. Maya, this is the kind of work the industry needs." Her cheeks warmed. "You really think so?" "I know so." Before she could reply, he gestured toward the door. "Come on. We're getting coffee. I want to hear your story." They ended up in a cozy cafe tucked between two boutiques. The rain from the day before had stopped, leaving the streets glistening. Over steaming mugs of latte, Maya found herself telling him about her life. Growing up in Accra, learning to sew from her grandmother, moving to Seoul for better opportunities, and the dream that had been burning in her chest for years. I want plus-size women to feel beautiful," she said. "Not hidden. Not told they should wear black to look slimmer. I want them to wear color, to stand out, to be celebrated." He listened intently, leaning forward. "When I was a boy," he began, "my parents' world was nothing but fabric and fashion shows. It was beautiful, but it was also empty. Everything was about trends and profit. I kept wondering, where are the clothes that tell a story? Clothes that mean something to the people who wear them? That's why your designs hit me. They have a heartbeat." She sipped her coffee slowly, unsure what to say. Somehow, the conversation flowed easily after that. About markets in Ghana, about his first disastrous attempt to design a jacket at 15, about food, family, and the strange ways life pushes two people into each other's orbit. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became frequent. Sometimes it was coffee again, sometimes strolls through fabric markets where Jisoo asked questions about African patterns like a curious student, sometimes afternoons in the studio where he'd let her suggest color pairings to his designers. Each time, Maya felt both thrilled and terrified. Their worlds were so different, his polished, fast-moving, wealthy, hers practical, grounded, struggling. She couldn't see how they fit. One evening, as they left the market with bags of fabric, she finally voiced it. "Jisoo, I don't know if I belong in your world." He stopped walking and looked at her. "Maya, I value your ideas more than anyone else's in that world. You don't need to belong anywhere else but beside me." Her chest tightened at the sincerity in his tone. A week later, he surprised her. "Come to dinner," he said casually one afternoon in the studio. "Dinner," she repeated. "At my parents' home." "Your parents? As in your billionaire high society parents? The ones who probably expect their son to marry some perfect heiress." "They'll like you," he said simply, as if it were a fact. That night, Maya sat stiffly at the long dining table, acutely aware of the expensive chandelier overhead, the polished silverware, the perfectly arranged flowers. Jisoo's father was tall, dignified, his voice deep but warm. His mother had a graceful presence. Maya expected polite, guarded small talk, maybe a few curious stares. But instead, the conversation turned lively. "So, Maya," his mother said, smiling, Jisoo tells me you design clothing for plus-size women. Maya swallowed her nerves and nodded. Yes. I want women of all sizes to feel seen, to feel beautiful. His mother's eyes lit up. That's wonderful. The industry has needed that for so long. You're very talented, I hear. Maya blinked, surprised. You really think so? I know so, she said with a small smile, echoing her son's earlier words. Creativity that comes from the heart is rare. Cherish it. The rest of the evening passed in easy conversation. By the time they stepped out into the cool night air, Maya was almost in disbelief at how well it had gone. As they reached his car, Jisoo slipped his hand into hers. She looked up at him, startled, but he was smiling. They like you, he whispered. Then his voice dropped even lower. But I have already loved you for a while. Her breath caught, and before she could find words, he gently opened the passenger door for her. The drive back to her apartment was quiet at first, the city lights sliding past in golden blurs. She kept glancing at him, wondering if she'd imagined what he'd said. Halfway there, he spoke. Maya, don't let tonight fool you into thinking you have to prove yourself to anyone. You already belong in any room you walk into. You're talented, you're bold, and you have a vision people need to see. If I can see it, they can too. She smiled faintly, staring out at the rain-speckled window. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, he admitted. But you've already been doing the hard part, showing up, even when the world tells you to stay small. I'm just here to remind you you're not small. Not in talent. Not in presence. Not in heart. When they pulled up in front of her building, she hesitated before getting out. Thank you, Jisoo. For everything. He held her gaze, his expression soft. This is just the beginning, Maya Williams. And I'll be right here for every step of it. Her heart felt lighter as she walked to her door, the echo of his words following her inside like a quiet promise. Maya woke the next morning with Jisoo's words still in her head. You already belong in any room you walk into. She replayed them as she made breakfast, as she tied her headscarf, and even as she headed out to make her deliveries. Only this time, she wasn't just a delivery girl in the rain. She was someone on the brink of something bigger. That week, she took the leap. With her savings and a small loan from a Ghanaian friend in Seoul, she rented a modest workspace above a grocery store. It smelled faintly of onions from the shop downstairs, but to Maya, it was the scent of freedom. A battered sewing machine sat in the corner, and bolts of fabric were stacked against one wall. Jisoo stopped by the first evening she worked there, leaning against the doorframe with a paper bag in hand. You didn't tell me you were moving into your own studio. It's not really a studio, she said, grinning as she took the bag from him. Inside were still warm mandu dumplings. More like a glorified storage room with dreams. Dreams are what make the room worth it, he said simply. What do you need? She hesitated. Everything. But I'll figure it out. The next day, she found out what he meant when he asked. A fabric supplier called her out of the blue, saying Jisoo had recommended her. Then came an email from a freelance photographer offering to shoot her designs at a discount. Every time she confronted Jisoo about it, he just shrugged. I'm just introducing you to people. You make the decisions. Days turned into weeks, and they worked side by side. Jisoo sketched with her, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with surprising precision. She taught him about Kent patterns and wax prints, about the symbolism in certain colors. He showed her how to read fabric weights and how to tweak patterns for perfect drape. Slowly, her pieces came to life, African vibrance meeting Korean elegance in every stitch. One evening, as she held up a finished jacket, he tilted his head. This one. I like. You like all of them, she teased. No, I love this one. In fact. His lips curved into that mischievous smile she'd learned to recognize. I'm wearing it. Wearing it where? She asked suspiciously. You'll see. 2 days later, Maya nearly dropped her phone when she saw the photos online. There was Jisoo, standing at some high-profile art gala, wearing her jacket, rich indigo wax print panels against sleek black wool, the cut sharp yet flattering. The internet had noticed too. Her notifications were flooded. Who designed Kong Jisoo's jacket? Finally, something fresh in menswear. We need to see more of this. When she saw him that evening, she folded her arms. You didn't warn me. I didn't need to, he said with a grin. Now you've got free marketing worth more than any ad campaign. He wasn't wrong. That week, she received her first small orders, mostly from curious stylists and a handful of plus-size clients who had stumbled upon her Instagram. The thrill was enough to push her into another decision. I'm quitting the delivery job, she told him over coffee one morning. He set his cup down. Are you sure? I'm sure. I want to do this full time. I can't juggle deliveries and deadlines anymore. If I fall on my face, I'll just get back up. His smile was one of quiet pride. Then I'll be here to help you back up, though something tells me you won't need me for that. In the weeks that followed, her workspace transformed. Fabric bolts multiplied, her sewing machine was joined by another, and the walls began to fill with sketches. Late nights became normal, sometimes alone, sometimes with Jisoo keeping her company, sipping tea and asking questions about every detail of her work. Their conversations had shifted too, slipping between fabric talk, dreams for the future, and the occasional quiet moment where words weren't necessary at all. Then, one afternoon, as she was pinning a sleeve, Jisoo leaned against her cutting table. It's time for people to see your work properly, he said. They have on Instagram in those interviews. I mean, really see it, he said. A showcase. Something small but professional. Maya laughed. Jisoo, I'm barely keeping up with orders. I don't have the money or the connections for. You have me, he interrupted gently. And more importantly, you have the talent. I'll handle the logistics. You just focus on the clothes. She bit her lip. You're serious? Completely. By the end of that week, she was deep in preparations for her first mini showcase. She worked until her fingers ached, pouring herself into every piece. She didn't know that while she worried about hems and fittings, Jisoo was quietly making arrangements of his own. Phone calls, invitations, surprises she wouldn't see coming. Late one night, after she finally switched off her sewing machine, she texted him, "You're crazy for doing this." His reply came almost instantly, maybe. "But you're worth it." She smiled to herself, not knowing just how unforgettable he was planning to make the night. The night had finally come. Maya stood behind the thick velvet curtain, her palms pressed together to stop the tremor in her hands. The air was charged with anticipation. Camera flashes glinted from the audience, snippets of conversations floated in the air, and somewhere in the distance, the low hum of the music test run echoed through the room. She dared to peek through the gap in the curtain. Rows of neatly dressed journalists were seated at the front, pens and notebooks ready. Influencers leaned casually in their seats, their phones already poised to capture every moment. Fashion enthusiasts, some in elaborate couture, others in minimalistic chic, filled the rest of the room, their expressions alive with curiosity. Behind her, models were lined up, each wearing a creation she had poured her soul into. The fabrics shimmered under the backstage lights. Rich African prints in bold, unapologetic colors, fused with clean, sharp Korean tailoring. Every piece told a part of her story, her roots, her joy, her resilience. She took in a shaky breath. This was it. Hey! Jisoo's voice was calm, steady, and warm as he came to stand beside her. He was dressed in one of her own designs, a tailored jacket that fit him perfectly, the ankara lining peeking subtly when he moved. They're going to love it, he said, his eyes catching hers. You think so? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I know so, he replied without hesitation. His confidence in her was so steady it felt like a hand at her back, pushing her forward. The music swelled, signaling the start. One by one, the models stepped onto the runway, the applause starting small but growing with each stride. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. Phones came up to capture the intricate beadwork, the daring cuts, the unexpected harmony between cultures. Maya watched from the shadows, her heart pounding, her chest tightening with pride. When the final model appeared in the showstopper gown, a floor-length golden ankara silk masterpiece with a structured Korean-inspired bodice, the audience gasped audibly. The gown glided down the runway like liquid sunlight, commanding the room. Then silence. And then applause. Loud, unrestrained applause that seemed to fill the air and wrap around her like a warm embrace. She stepped out shyly for her bow, her knees trembling but her smile unshakable. But before she could retreat backstage, Jisoo's voice rang out over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, stepping onto the stage with the ease of a man who belonged in the spotlight. Before we close this unforgettable night, I need to say something. Maya blinked in confusion, watching as he reached into his pocket. Tonight wasn't just about fashion, he continued, his gaze never leaving hers. It was about courage, heritage, and love. Maya Williams is not just a designer. She is a force. She's someone who changed the way I see beauty. She taught me that true elegance has nothing to do with size or status, and everything to do with the size of the heart and the strength of the spirit. The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone near the front whispered, "Wow," under their breath. Maya felt her throat tighten. And, Jisoo went on, his voice softening, "I don't want to just be a chapter in her story. I want to be there for every collection she designs, every milestone she reaches, every dream she dares to dream." He took a step closer, and that was when she saw it, the small velvet box in his hand. Gasps erupted from the audience as he dropped to one knee. The cameras exploded in a frenzy of flashes. Maya's heart was thundering now, her vision blurring with tears. "Maya," he said, his voice low but clear, "will you marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth. The sound of the audience seemed to fade until it was just him, kneeling there, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. "Yes," she breathed, her voice shaking. "Yes, Jisoo. 1,000 times yes." The cheers were deafening as he slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed under the blinding runway lights, surrounded by applause and camera flashes. It felt like the end of a fairy tale, except she knew it was only the beginning. Months later, the name Serwa Seoul gleamed proudly on the wall of the Kong Couture flagship store. Maya stood in front of it the first morning it went up, running her fingers lightly over the gold lettering. Inside, her designs had their own dedicated space, displayed with the same elegance and respect as the Kong Couture line. "Still can't believe it?" Jisoo asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee in hand. She took hers, smiling faintly. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and it'll be gone." "It's not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Neither am I." They walked hand in hand through the bustling streets of Seoul, the cold air crisp around them. The city lights reflected in the puddles from an earlier rain. Eventually, they stopped in front of the small cafe where they had shared their first long conversation. The glass windows glowed warmly in the evening light, and Maya smiled at the memory of that rainy day. "We were so different then," she said quietly. "You were the CEO, and I was just—" "Not just anything," Jisoo interrupted gently. "You were always the woman I was going to fall in love with." She laughed softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Well, now I'm your wife and your business partner. Guess you're stuck with me forever." "Forever sounds perfect," he replied, opening the cafe door for her. And this time they walked in not as a delivery girl and a CEO, but as partners, in life, in love, and in the dream they had built together.